Hi, welcome. Welcome to my video on the basic concepts that I teach regarding emotional management, especially that of anger and rage, although the concepts are applicable to any life issue. You ever been caught in emotional issues, not able to move beyond what trapped you? Did it zap you of your personal power and satisfaction? And if so, my anger management program, Blowing Out the Darkness, is for you. I know about being trapped because everything I teach comes out of my own life difficulties. I'm Dave MacQuarrie, a retired physician-psychotherapist. I function as a coach. I also have a PhD in wisdom studies. I worked in Ontario and British Columbia for about 25 years and developed my own anger management program. Much of what I teach is written in my first book, Blowing Out the Darkness, The Management of Emotional Life Issues, especially anger and rage. My second book, Acedia, The Darkness Within and the Darkness of Climate Change, summarizes what I learned about emotional stuckness. And although I focus on emotional issues such as the anger and rage, I see anger as the canary in the coal mine. It's the early warning sign of the overwhelming dysfunction of our culture: stress, trauma, depression, polarization, and much more. The intention of this video is to present some of the basic concepts that I use with people, the tools that I use. A tool is simply a device for accomplishing a task. Here I offer simple but very powerful concepts that improve living. And like any tool, knowing how to use them is vital. In particular, they allow one to live into the healing of the Serenity Prayer, which you've probably heard. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. When I first heard these words, in my own early 30s, I really liked them, but it took me years to know what to do with them. Now, if you like the contents of this video, there's some timings noted in the transcript. Hopefully, this will allow you to come back to any particular segment that interests you. So, to continue with teaching, I'm going to put on a PowerPoint and lead you through the basic concepts. Let me just take a moment to get set up on it, and we'll carry on. Slideshow, big contents. So some basic concepts. I'm also going to move my thumbnail out of the way. So some basic concepts. These concepts are the tools that I generally use in the management of emotional life issues, especially anger and rage. But as I say, they're applicable to any particular emotional issue that you may be struggling with. Now, the first tool basically is safety. So, a question: have you ever been with someone who is angry or enraged? What was the problem? What was the problem with being angry? Was it the anger, or was it something else? I maintain it was something else. I suggest that either you or someone else did not feel safe. So, some definitions. Safety is the absence of the risk of harm. Security, though, is perceived safety. I feel safe. The two words are not necessarily the same. And in particular, as a therapist, I pay meticulous attention to language. As I say, safety is the absence of harm, of the risk of harm. You can feel secure and not be safe. So safety is the essential issue in emotional issues. And for me, I define safety operationally as what I call no SAD. No intention to scare another human being, no attacking of another biologic creature, and no destroying inappropriately, that which I would not destroy when peaceful. You can think of safety as a sandbox. You can play anywhere in the sandbox, but you don't go outside the sandbox, because outside you're not safe. The second essential rule is stop. That if anybody feels scared, i.e., they're not secure, and they say stop, then we stop whatever we're doing immediately, because otherwise that person is compromised. And because safety is the essential issue, we do not want compromise. Okay, so that's safety. The second important concept is what I call the action model, how we create reality. Basically, human beings move from stimulus to response, like any biologic creature. And, for simplicity, I call this the spoon and moving to action. In between, we have this marvelous device, the mind, which regulates how we move from stimulus to response. Not only is it marvelous, but it's also the place in which we get stuck. Something happens in life, the stimulus, and we experience it, we sense it, we evaluate it based on our values, beliefs, memories, and expectations. We create a meaning, we create a story about it. We create a plan of action of how to respond. We create energy, emotion, and we move that energy into response. So that fundamentally, we are energy transformers, moving energy from the environment back to the environment. Now, we never respond to the stimulus. We respond to the meaning that we make of the stimulus. And because we can never truly know what the stimulus is, the earliest we can know is what's called the F1 response, the first sensory awareness. The earliest we can respond to is F1, but most of the time we're responding to meaning. That is what I call the ghost. We respond to the inner world of meaning, to ghosts, not reality, or stimulus. And the possibility, if we don't like what we're responding to, the possibility of change is available. Generally out of conscious, yet available. We can change the way we evaluate, and most powerfully, if we know how to do it, we can change the sensory awareness in a way that leads to profound change. So, next concept, the pot, the nature of our minds. Consider the mind as a pot of stew sitting on a stove being heated. The contents of the pot are the past, our values, beliefs, memories, and expectations largely from our family of origin, food. Being heated by the recent past, finances, relationships, home and work situations, and recent events. Now, when that happens, when you put a pot of the stew on the stove and heat it, it percolates and stuff comes to the surface. Those are our thoughts and feelings that surface. If they come to the surface with enough energy, the behaviors bubble out, and in so doing, reduce the energy in the pot. Fundamental there is that action reduces the energy in the pot. There's also a spoon in the pot. The current experience, what I'm responding to right now, the spoon can add energy and can also stir the pot considerably and really whip up the contents of the pot. Now, if this metaphor makes sense to you, I want you to consider this. First of all, we act in the present. Actions empty the pot. If you want to reduce your emotional energy, you have to act. The second important thing is, if you truly, if this is an accurate metaphor, and you put a spoon into a pot and bring a carrot to the surface, would you ever say the spoon made the carrot? Well, that's nonsense. The spoon didn't make the carrot. The carrot was already there. Yet, why then do you say, you made me angry? or you made me do it. Those statements are not accurate. They are simply saying the spoon made the carrot. Next experience is that of, the full pot. As our lives get more complex and the energy rises, we want to avoid the energy, so we put a lid on the pot. And for the most part, many people live as pressure cookers, with a high energy internally and a lid on the pot so that nobody sees what's going on with them. Under those circumstances, there's really 4 kinds of pressure cooker. If the lid is loose and pops off erratically, we call it a panic attack. If the lid is held tight and the pressure builds up, every once in a while we explode and we violate others. If we really seal up the lid of the pot, deep pressure gets high, and we talk about being depressed because deep pressure is high. We violate ourselves. And finally, if under extreme circumstances, we go apathetic and we become a time bomb. And then you get the newspaper story of the person, man, woman, who took a submachine gun and killed 20 people. And we wonder what happened to them. Well, basically, they were time bombs, having experienced too much in their lives. Now, this is not a psychiatric model. It's much more a sociological model. But I maintain it's a much more accurate model of what happens with emotional issues in our culture. Okay, what we often do. Again, the action model. Something happens in life, we feel threatened by it. We're not safe. We feel powerless. That's our meaning. And we create a story called conflict. We feel stressed and angry, but we also say to ourselves, we shouldn't feel that way. Our shoulds. We stop our action, afraid. And then we stuff the energy and we become a pressure cooker, as previously noted. We don't know what to do, so we cycle in the energy, always doing what we've always done. And eventually we blow up or we blow down. We explode or we stonewall, we depress. And then we start the process all over again. Now, I maintain that, when you mash the issues together, as we usually do, they become too complex. We need to separate them. So a question, to what extent is this typical of who you are? Is this an accurate description of how you live your life? What we could do, in my own work, I developed what I call the blowing out model, instead of blowing up or blowing down. In the blowing out model, I create safety, no abandonment. I take a time out, no guilt, no shame, and I function under no sad, and stop. Those are the basic ground rules. I take a time out. Usually my time out is 20 minutes. 10 minutes to release my energy, 10 minutes to process what's going on with me. That's step 1, create safety. Second step is discharge the energy any way that works, independent of the conflict. I don't have to, deal with the conflict. I separate myself from the conflict and dump the energy. That might mean that I scream into a bowl. It might mean what I call silent screaming. I can dump a lot of energy in silent screaming, or in screaming into a bowl, or in taking a baseball bat to a heavy bag, anything that allows me to get the energy out of my body. In so doing, I very quickly learn a message. The energy either feels familiar. Oh, I've been here before. Hey, no, I'm not fighting with you. I'm actually fighting with my brother. And, it reminds me of how I used to get caught with my brother. Or the energy feels new. I loaned you $500. You said you'd pay me back yesterday. I haven't seen the money. That's not anger at my brother. That's you not keeping your word. So I need to make the distinction between, is the message about my own powerlessness, or is it truly about a conflict with the other? Step 4 is I need to resolve the conflict. And notice the difference between resolve and solve. In solve, the problem goes away. In resolve, I'm at peace with the problem. Perhaps you're at peace with the problem as well, but at least I'm at peace with the problem. So if the message is about myself, my own powerlessness, then I basically need to apologize to you and say, I'm going to change this. I'm going to change this aspect of myself. If the message is about the other, I can come to you and say, basically, look, you and I have a problem. You and I have a difficulty, and I want a resolution that works for both of us. Are you willing to cooperate? If you are, then we'll resolve it. We're not stupid as human beings. We're often stuck in our patterns, but we're not stupid. And we will resolve if we're willing to cooperate. But if you're not willing to cooperate, then I can maintain my energy and I can use my skills, different skills, to deal with non-cooperative conflict. Now, I maintain that everything above this line is 100% within my choice. I can create safety, I can discharge energy, I can learn the message, I can deal with my own powerlessness. Dealing with you, whether or not you're cooperative, is not in my power, but in my power, in how I respond to you, is also my choice. Now, emotions. Emotions fundamentally are complex descriptions of life energy. They exist in your body. And my best definition of emotion is energy to which I give meaning and direction. They are at the interface between my mind and my body. Now, I think of emotions as those in which I gain and those in which I have pain, and meaning and direction. If I consider 4 common emotions, anger, I push against you. Sadness, I want to move away from you. Fear, I want to move away from you. Sadness, I sink down. And joy, I bubble up. And under those circumstances, anger, sadness, fear, and joy, I generally feel powerful and that I can do something about it. Now, if I start to feel powerless, if I start to feel overwhelmed by the energy, then my anger becomes a bigger energy, and I call it rage. My sadness becomes some form of despair. My fear becomes some form of terror. My joy becomes some form of ecstasy. And if I'm really overwhelmed by these issues, my anger rage becomes self-righteousness. My sadness, despair becomes a form of malignant laziness. And my fear, terror becomes fearfulness. I catastrophize about everything. Now, these 3, self-righteousness, laziness, and fearfulness, are such that fundamentally we give up. And they were the basis of my PhD dissertation. When I started to study them, I recognized that they were subsumed under an ancient word called acedia, a word that most people have not heard of. But acedia is a trap. Acedia is, a situation in which I give up, and it's often manifested as some form of violation of others. Yet, acedia is a choice, and it's usually another than conscious choice. Now, a major concept that has been really important to me relates to our complexity. It's called sailors on a ship. It's a metaphor. The human mind is very much like a ship where the sailors have mutinied and have locked the captain and the navigator in the cabin. Each sailor believes himself free to steer the ship as he pleases, and first one sailor and then another takes over the helm while the ship travels on a random and erratic course. These sailors cannot agree on a goal, and even if they could, they do not know how to navigate the ship to reach it. So, the ship moves in an erratic course. I used to talk about my potato chip issues. the end of the day, I'm hungry, I'm wandering in the kitchen, and I open a bag of potato chips. That's potato chip kid. My critic voice says, "You idiot, you're going to eat the whole damn bag." And my captain, Dr. Dave says, no, we knew this. No, this is the problem. We decided what we're going to do with it. So we're going to get a bowl and we're going to, fill it with potato chips, maybe a quarter of the bag, and, then put the bag away for the weekend. So I do that. And meanwhile, potato chip kid is saying, yeah, potato chips. And critic voice is saying, I don't trust you turkeys. And Dr. Dave is saying, no, I'm in charge of the ship. So we do that. Go in, sit in the living room, munching potato chips while we think about supper. And pretty soon, there's an empty bag of potato chips in my lap. Where did it come from? Well, I went unconscious, mutiny. And the task of the individual is to quell this mutiny and release the captain and the navigator. Only then is he free to choose a goal and steer a direct course to reach it. So again, as you listen to this metaphor, how is this true or untrue of your specific issues? Now, the most important diagram in my life relates to what are called emotional triangles, how we relate. An emotional triangle is based on the fact that we are creatures of meaning, but we relate in emotional triangles. It allows energy to circulate. Energetically, we relate to both people and ideas and concepts. So an emotional triangle is any two people, first person, second person, and third person are an issue. And our major stuckness occurs with what's called the third limb. Here's me. This limb. I don't belong to this limb. It's my third limb. For this person, this is their third limb. They don't belong to it. And anytime you have anger, I guarantee there's a third limb issue going on. Literally, we exist in thousands of emotional triangles. It's both our stability and our stuckness. Here's 9 dots. Could be me, my 3 children, my wife, her 4 children. 9 dots. That's 84 emotional triangles. If, I start to add in issues, I'm probably 100, 150, emotional triangles going on there. And literally, triangles can occur both with the external triangles between other people and the internal triangles within, with sailors within me. And thus, literally, at any one time, even with just 9 dots, I probably exist in 1,000 or more emotional triangles. Add in all the other complexity of my life, guaranteed thousands of triangles. And there are 3 fundamental laws of relationships, of emotional triangles. I call them laws because they're independent of culture, of gender. They simply describe what human beings do. The first law is, I can only change that to which I'm connected. I can change myself. I can change the relationships that I have with people. Second law is, if I change, others must change. We are connected. That's the basis by which I create change in the third limb of an emotional triangle. And third law is, change requires I stay connected. Now, as I say, you've heard of the Serenity Prayer. This is the Serenity Prayer in action, operational. The Serenity Prayer says, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the third limb of the emotional triangle. The courage to change the things I can, myself and the relationships I connect to, and the wisdom to know the difference, the emotional intelligence to know how and when to respond to the third limb of the emotional triangle. So basically, I strive to function from high intention to change what I can and low attachment to the outcome that occurs. So emotional triangles, I would underline, are subtle yet incredibly powerful. Now, they also show up in what's called the crab trap. We get trapped. Now, I learned about the crab trap from one of my mentors who was an internationally known therapist, very interested in biology, spent a lot of time with biologists, particularly at Woods Hole on the Atlantic coast. He talked about catching crabs in crab traps. And he talked about it, I've never been able to establish whether or not it's accurate or metaphor, but he talked about it as being accurate. Crab trap, big box, maybe 6 feet by 6 feet by 3 feet. Chicken wire bottom, put some ropes and a float on it, row it out to where you think the crabs are, 10 or 12 feet of water. Put bait in the box, dump it over the side, maybe put some box in it so it sinks to the bottom, and come back 24 hours later. In the meantime, crab comes along, climbs in. Pretty soon you've got 20 crabs in the box, munching on the bait. Soon the bait is all gone, and they're trapped. How? They are trapped by their basic biology. Scientists talk about the togetherness factor. Crabs are social beings. When they get confined into a space like this box, no top, they, want to stay together. So if one crab tries to leave, the others pull it back into the box. If a second crab tries to leave, the others pull it back in the box, including the first crab. And if a crab really insists on leaving, the others will tear its claws off in the struggle to keep it in the box. So the fisherman comes back at 24 hours. Here are 20 crabs, 18 alive, 2 dead, off to market. Now, what other creature do you know of that is a social creature? Well, us as human beings. And I invite you to consider the nature of the word should, especially the tyranny of the word should. You only have to look at the wars of the 20th century. You look at these struggles of the 21st century to recognize how much of a tyranny is the word should. And fundamentally, shoulds are the basis of expectation and the basis by which we hide as human beings. So when I encounter a should, I simply ask myself, according to whom? And then, will I do what is necessary? Will I, if I do what the should ask me, what it's going to cost me, what's the worst that will happen? If I don't do what they should, is asking, what's the worst that will happen? And I make a choice. I do not live my life as shoulds. Okay, continuing. Powerlessness. Powerlessness refers to the inner journey and ultimately requires a captain. And I suggest that with self-study of yourself using the emotional triangles, sailors on a ship, and the other study and the other concepts, a captain will evolve. It takes patience, determination, supportive relationships, and to a certain extent, it takes money. We are pain avoiders as human beings, and hence the work is difficult. I won't minimize that. I went through basically 10 years of hell to really get myself to a place of health. Now, I came from a lot of dysfunction, and I really was determined to get through it and to really change my life in a way that led to a satisfactory life. So it was hard work for me. I suggest it be hard work for most people, but that's what life is. The most important skill is awareness. In the modern language, it's called mindfulness. It's also called vipassana in Buddhist meditation. Now, awareness, from my Gestalt training, is attention to one's spontaneously emerging experience. Here am I as a human being. I'm a sensory-grounded information processor. I can pay attention to the outside, so-called five senses, or I can pay attention to the inside, what's going on in my body, or I can pay attention to the middle, basically the story that I'm going to make up. Fundamentally, the data is the outside information, the middle is the story, and I need to maximize the data and minimize the story if I'm going to be effective in life. You know, there's a lot more I could say about that, but in this video, there's simply not time. Now, changing the data, modifying the data, is then modifying that F1 experience and can lead to profound change. You know, when I started off as a therapist 20 years ago, I wasn't aware of that. You know, I was much more invested in changing the meaning, changing the evaluation. But once I learned about how to change the F1 state, I was astounded at the changes that can take place rapidly, you know, in seconds to minutes. And changes that still has the option of changing the values, beliefs, memories, and expectations. Now, I suggest that the study of sailors and emotional triangles, both internal and external, is essential to growth. Now, the additional concept is that of burnout. Burnout is the outcome of immature leadership in conflict. It occurs when one is focused on others. And when focused on others, the nature of emotional triangles leads to ineffectiveness and exhaustion. So, you know, focus on the third limb, unhealthy, becoming willful. Anxiety concerning the third limb is dysfunctional, and is very fatiguing. And I make a distinction between fatigue and tired. In fatigue, my body is tired, and I need cessation, relaxation. In tired, my mind is tired, and I'm saying, "Oh God, I'm tired. Oh, not again." And I'm moving in the direction of burnout. Fatigue, I can restore. Burnout takes more work. Burnout, as I say, is when I'm focused on the third limb of the emotional triangle. It relates to emotional immaturity. It occurs with leadership, and it also occurs when the followership, the people who are following the leader, require an excessive amount of work. But if the leader will focus on self, leading others, managing him or herself, then the leader avoids burnout. Healthy responses are self-focused and lead to wisdom. And hence my statement, high intention, low attachment. And I focus on myself, I interact with the third limb of the triangle, and I let go with no attachment to the outcome. So the healthy options are these. I can leave. It's a useful option sometimes, but if I leave prematurely, I take my own stresses with me and likely create the problem elsewhere. So the best time to leave is when I know what to do about the third limb, and I simply don't want to waste my time managing it. I leave. If I encounter that issue elsewhere, I still know what to do. Second, find a way to release my energy. Always useful. It allows me to think more clearly. Third, leave temporarily. Plan some options as to how I respond. Again, always useful. The options may not work. I may not use them, but they allow me to be more relaxed and comfortable in coming into the conflict situation. Extend positive energy to people. Again, always useful. In another way, it's called love. Love your enemies, fundamentally. It's a very powerful stance. Clarify the emotional issues, both my own issues and that of my best guess as to the other. Again, always useful. It may not directly impact the third limb, but it reduces my own anxiety, and it's often very helpful to bystanders. 6, assert myself. Least important, sometimes necessary. Especially aggression is sometimes useful, but is my last choice, basically. And finally, becoming playful. Play is the most complex of the skills. It's the ability to relax and be creative in my responses to the third limb of the triangle. The danger of playfulness is escalation. The other may not like my being playfulness because they may not experience it as being playful. And they potentially will escalate. So I need to be prepared for the escalation. I need to be prepared for sabotage, which will always occur. And if I am able to maintain myself, my own level of anxiety, at a minimal level, then ultimately I will find a resolution that works for me. Now, clients, in terms of client load, clients particularly come with what I call pony tracks. You've been to the circus, you've seen the ponies walking, dressed up in bangles, the kids ride, walking around in a circle. But what about the ponies? The ponies are looking bored and pained. And that's what clients do. They come to me on a pony track. And, it takes me anywhere up to 1 to 6 sessions to identify the pony track. I then offer that to the client as a choice. Here's your pony track. What do you want to do about it? About 30%, about a third, will say, oh, now that I recognize my pony track, I can live with it. It's painful, but to do something else will cost me. I'd have to end my marriage, I'd lose my job, there'd be just too much pain. I don't want to deal with that. I can live with the pony track. And they live, they're satisfied. The other 2/3 engage in a process of change, and we experiment, we test, we do various things to see, for the client to see if they can get a different outcome. And eventually they do. In general, that takes 3 to 6 months of work, and they reach a place of being at peace with themselves. At that point, about half of them, another third, and they've got what they want, they're out of pain, and they're satisfied, and they might come back a year from now, 10 years from now, that sort of thing. And the final third will actually say to me, oh, now that I've gotten through this pony track, I recognize I've got another pony track that I need to deal with. And for many clients, they have 5 to 6 pony tracks that they're dealing with. And if they will deal with them, they will reach a place of profound peace in their lives, deeply satisfied with who they are as human beings. And I suggest that is what many human beings want. A lot of human beings simply want to get out of pain, but a lot also want to be deeply at peace with what life offers. And I suggest that resolution is possible. So are you worth that investment? Thank you. Now, if you like what I've been talking about, then, you can come to me again. If you like the concepts, the timings are below in the transcript. And if you'd like more, check out my blog, The Human Side of Global Warming. It's all one word, www.thehumansideofglobalwarming.com. And there you'll find, a lot of information. You may find what I call my email anger management program especially useful. And if you want to work with me personally, you send me an email at dave.mccue@icloud.com to set up a free exploration for the benefits that might flow from our collaboration with serenity, courage, and wisdom. Thank you. I hope you have a great day, and I hope that you found this video useful. Take care.